Hi, welcome to the CCSP training course. This video is focused on part 3 of domain 1, that is security concepts related to the cloud computing. Please subscribe to the channel and enable the bell icon if not yet done. Also, please share the link with the aspiring candidates in your organization or in your network. The cryptography and the key management, we discussed this topic in the previous video about the data states, data at rest, data in transit, and what all controls that we should use, and what are the mechanisms for the key management, and what is the recommendation for based on the criticality of the data. So please refer to the previous video. Identity and access management. Here, this is a combination of three things basically that we include in IAM, people, process, and technology. These are used to manage the access to the enterprise resources. This ensures the identity of an entity, that is being verified. The whether the correct level of access is granted based on the criticality of the assets and the services and protected resources which are being accessed. From the exam point of view, always remember when it comes to the IAM, so what is the preferred way or what is the best way we should choose always is the multi-factor authentication. That should be our first priority from the exam point of view. There are different phases in IAM, identity and access management. First of all, when it comes to the granting the access, it always starts from the provisioning to grant the access to provide the identity to somebody. And there is one more, the just the opposite to provisioning. It is very important, that is the deprovisioning. Then we have the centralized directory services, privileged user management, and authentication and access management. So what is provisioning? As I mentioned, the goal of the provisioning is to standardize, streamline, and to provide a framework which is which is scalable enough, based on the standard frameworks, and the streamlined process for the provisioning, for the purpose of the efficient account creation. This need to be maintained, the consistent, measurable, traceable, and auditable framework. For example, when the access was provisioned and to whom it was provisioned and who has provisioned. So all these kind of things should be traceable and auditable whenever people want to audit. Deprovisioning is the opposite of the provisioning. So it is, for sure, from the security perspective, this is more important than the provisioning. Why? Because this also, remember when the people are being transferred from one department to another, people who are separating from the company. So it is very very important to draw deprovision their identity, and deprovision their accesses, revoke their accesses from the different services. Remember, for the exam, the deprovisioning applies the principle of least privilege. So when it comes to the attempting the exam and you find anything related to the principle of least privilege and minimizing the risk associated with the unnecessary access routes, it is always the deprovisioning that is the solution to it. So different things here in um, the provisioning and the deprovisioning, or we can say the IAM, that is identity, uh, then we have authentication, then we have authorization, and then we have auditing, and then we have accountability. So sometimes we call it as I triple A or sometimes four times A. So identity, authentication, authorization, auditing, and accountability. So you need to prove your identity. You need to get yourself authenticated. You need to have access to the different services based on your authorization. The whole process should be auditable, and based on those audit records, somebody should be held accountable for that. The directory services, it is a relational hierarchy of any cloud identities that manages the storage and processing of the information. In the on-prem world, an Active Directory is a key example of the directory service which offers the authentication, policy enforcement, the corporate policy, and the other services for an enterprise organization. Um, Major CSPs, the cloud service providers, now offer the cloud native directory services, many of which can integrate with the customer's existing on-prem directory services. For example, this Active Directory. Within the cloud environment, the directory services play a huge role in establishing and maintaining a trusted source for the organizational identity and access policies. Different protocols in the cloud which help us to integrate or to link to identity to um, the cloud applications, like LDAP, the lightweight directory access protocol, and the SAML, security assertion markup language. Privileged access management. This is focused on the processes and ongoing requirements to manage the life cycle, especially starting from the provisioning to deprovisioning. There is none of the stage between the provisioning and deprovisioning should be left from the management, especially for the because this topic we are discussing is for the high privilege, the highest privileges, privileged accounts, and these poses the highest risk and impact, because if the highest privileges accounts are compromised, then there will be huge impact on the business, depending on the nature of assets that this account was responsible for. So the security should always be the priority. The access management should always be the priority for the privileged accounts, starting from provisioning to the deprovisioning stages. Also, the cloud security professional should track and monitor the successful and failed authentications. Also, track usage, authorization time and date, log successful and failed events that are done through this privileged account, enforce the password management, and contain the sufficient level of auditing and reporting for any privileged privileged accounts. Data and media sanitization. This is a very important topic, especially when it comes to the data, the vendor lock-in, especially. It can happen due to any unfavorable contractual agreement, because probably we missed some of the aspects that we did not discuss during the contract finalization, and hence the customer is stuck there, and hence the vendor lock-in. This also describes the situation where the proprietary formats, technology, etc., and this makes it very difficult to move from one cloud to another for any customer. And also when leaving or migrating from a cloud provider, considering that must be made for export or import of the data in the standard formats. for the migration purpose. When it comes to the media sanitization in the cloud, uh, we we always had, the degaussers or the physical destruction of these storage devices in the traditional infrastructure, and that was the best way. But in cloud, it is not possible. It is not an option here because you do not have access to the physical data center, and this is not in your control because for degaussing you need the physical drive, for physical destruction you need a physical drive, and that is not in your control. And possibly the same drive, the same storage media was storing some other customer's data, so it is not possible for you to destroy that. So what left is the overwriting. It is frequently used, of course, based on the nature of data that is that we are trying to sanitize. um, you can overwrite your existing data with the random bytes, and just try to sanitize the media. But that is also not sufficient when it comes to the critical data or any confidential data. It is of course the crypto shredding or the cryptographic erasure is the best option. So remember, from exam point of view, when it comes to the best media sanitization method for the data which is stored in the cloud, it is the crypto shredding, or also known as the cryptographic erasure. So what we do is here, for example, we have the data in the cloud, okay, and this data is supposed to be encrypted with the key. Okay, and this key will be erased after encrypting this data if you want to sanitize this. And once this key is erased, because this data is encrypted with the key which has been erased now, and this data becomes the unusable. So that is the best option for the cloud. Virtualization security. This is the virtualization is a key target for any attacker when they try to attack the data, when they try to attack the services which are running on the virtualization. So that is the key target for any attacker. Also, the hypervisor is the most vulnerable component in the virtualization, and this is also the boon for the cloud providers, because without the virtualization it is not possible to provide the full-fledged cloud services. So this is the key enabler technology for multi-tenancy and scalability. And the whole virtualization security relies on the security of hypervisor. May also allow the attackers to target the relevant component and the functions to gain unauthorized access to the resources. The in terms of the virtualization stack, we have the hardware underlying, and then we have host OS, then hypervisor, and then there are multiple guest OS which can be installed on top of that. So this allows the multiple OS to share a single hardware host. For example, uh, this is type 1, this is type 2, and in type 1 this hypervisor directly runs on the hardware. Okay, and this is also known as the bare metal. And VMware ESXi, Citrix Zen Server, etc. These are all hardware-based bare metal. The type 1 significantly reduce the attack surface because it doesn't exposes the hypervisor directly, and the VMs runs, the guest OS runs directly like in type 2. But in type 1 it reduces the attack surface significantly just because it doesn't expose that. And the hypervisor vendors has control over the relevant software that compromise and forms the hypervisor package, and reduce the likelihood of any malicious code being introduced. In type 2, the hypervisor runs on the host OS. So here in this, it was running directly on the hardware, while here the hypervisor runs on the host OS. And on top of the hypervisor, we can have the guest OSs, and we can also call them as virtual machines. So, that is the type 2. For example, we have the virtual PCs, virtual machines running on top of that. These are all software based. So type 2 is software based and type 1 is hardware based, we can say. On the other side, the type 2 have a great attack surface because of the vulnerabilities associated with the guest OS which are running here at this layer, and uh, the application that reside on the OS with the hypervisors. Uh, Here, the OS and application vulnerabilities can be exploited and used to attack the Type 2 hypervisors and their virtual machines here. So, what are the different common attacks from the cloud point of view? We have the data breach here. This is, for example, the cloud computing that has widened the scope of the data breaches. As bring your own device comes into the picture. For example, you are using the mobile devices, you're using your tab, laptop, etc., and everything is connected to back any cloud, any data. For example, we have certain regulations as well related to here. So if you are using the data, for example, related to, let's say, GDPR, you may have any data breach happen, then you are supposed to inform the to the relevant governing bodies. You may have, like, HIPAA. Okay, so in that case as well, you need to inform. You may have, for example, PCI DSS. Um, if you are storing the credit card data, then and there is any attack observed or any breach observed, then you need to inform these agencies. Data loss, the loss of the information due to any deletion, any overwriting, or any corruption, or any tampering related issues. You need to identify who owns the responsibility of data backup. First of all, you need to identify the custodian. You need to identify the owner of the data. And once the data is corrupted, can it be restored? How soon it is required? What is the recovery time objective? So depending on that, we need to design that. Restoration happens on the shared platform, so it has to be shared as soon as possible. If the encrypted data is uploaded, for example, the encryption key need to be protected. If the keys are lost, the data will not be accessible. So it is not just the data, but if the data is encrypted, then you need to take extra care of the keys. Okay. Account or service traffic hijacking. This is related to all the common attacks like phishing, smishing, etc., that is used to hijack a service, and then they can do the credential theft, and then they further perform the attacks. Insecure interface, APIs, the cloud resources are accessible by the APIs that are provided by the cloud service providers. So it becomes very important to take care of all the OWASP top 10, for example, here, um, to protect against the common attack. Okay, the denial of services, review your deployment, review your services, and identify, do we have any single point of failure in our services? If we could identify that, then first of all, we should try to mitigate that risk, because if we have the single point of failure, then there are high chances that we will have more downtime and denial just because of this denial of service. Malicious insider, this is to secure any organization's key asset. For example, any organization will have main assets like people, process, and technology. So people are the employees; they are the primary assets, processes, um, and the technology. Abuse of the cloud services, any inherent weakness of any internet service here. The attackers can also host the malicious software on the cloud. Proper segmentation should be there. Insufficient due diligence, due care. So, what is diligence? It is investigating and understanding the risks. Due care, developing the policies and procedures to address those risks. What if the cloud service provider goes bankrupt? Can we change the cloud service provider? Did we perform that due diligence? Did we perform the due care for that? Um, we need to think about that, because if the cloud service provider goes bankrupt, are we in vendor lock-in? So we need to identify these points from exam point of view. Shared technologies, vulnerabilities here. So this is the last point. This is related to, for example, that is the shared technology and vulnerability. So the multiple tenants brings in the risks here. The cloud service provider shares the infrastructure and technologies not only with the tenants but also with the cloud service providers. And these technologies and the vulnerabilities are shared among the different the cloud service providers and the customers. Um, and the layered protection and defense in depth is important, very important here to protect our assets against. With this slide we conclude this tutorial. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, comments, and enable the notifications for the regular updates. Share with all who are aspiring for the CCSP examination. Thank you.